For a year in my life, I thought that I was black.
Hey guys, this channel is called Today I Made a Mistake, and we are out here just making mistakes as we go through our lives. It will either be a good time or it's gonna be a good story.
Yay! Welcome back! I'm very excited for this series about identity crisis, but yeah, let's get into it. For a year in my life, I thought that I was black. Now, I'm gonna put a disclaimer in this video, obviously, because I understand that there might be sensitivities to the video, but right now I'm not sure how to navigate the sensitivities and remain authentic in my story. So I will honestly only know if I've done something wrong once we release this video. And just like the name of the channel, if I've made a mistake, we're gonna learn from it. And then we make the adjustments. Have you ever been asked the question, what are you? Have you ever been asked that question? Have you ever been minding your own business at a family event in a park and somebody stares at you like you're a spectacle or like you're on display, and then they look at you with a raised eyebrow because now you're staring back because they've been staring for quite a while, and then they say, where are you guys from? And then when you tell them South Africa, or you are a little bit more specific about where in South Africa you're from, because you don't even think that they're assuming that you're not from South Africa, then they have a weird look on their face like, oh. Imagine being asked what you are. For anybody who has been asked that question, I'm sorry, because it leads you to have a whole identity crisis. Before I get into my own story about the what am I's, I just wanted to give a little bit of background of South Africa so that if anybody that's watching this video, they know the context of the story. So a little bit of history about South Africa and a little bit of history about myself. So I was born in 1994, and in South Africa, that was the year that we went into democracy. So what this means is that it was the year that signified the abolishment of apartheid, that we were in a new government. Now, the apartheid laws pre-1994, it was about 40 years before 1994, were about separation and segregating race groups and giving privileges to a specific race group, which was the white people. One of the policies that we also had, one of the acts that were in place during apartheid, was called the Group Areas Act. And this was about separating people in areas by their race groups. White people had their areas, black people had their areas, colored people had their areas, and Indian people had their areas. So these were the four specific race groups that apartheid classified people by. And that's why, I don't know, if you've ever been to South Africa, you might find that there are similar looking people that are different from other people that all still live in the same area because their families and their previous families were either put there during apartheid or moved there, or they chose to live there. That was a specific area for their race group, and sometimes people don't move out of those things. So even though we're not in apartheid, you'll still find that there are areas of people that still live together. All right, so I'm a 1994 baby, and that was democracy, yeah, freedom babies, woo. With that being said, apartheid was only 28 years ago. It was only 28 years ago, which means why I'm highlighting this is that there are people who were policemen during the apartheid who were carrying out these laws that are still alive today. There are people who have lived more of their life in an apartheid regime than they've lived in a democracy era. There are lots of those people, and those people are also raising the future generation. So unfortunately, it doesn't work 1994 was 28 years ago, so there's no more apartheid or there's no more racism. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Okay, so that was a little bit of my rant. Let's go back to the video. To be honest, I just think that classifying people by their race is really not a good way to classify people. It's because what they used to do is, especially from physical characteristics, that's how you would be classified. So it could be the texture of your hair, the hue of your skin, maybe your surname, color of your eyes. And like, especially for colored families where there were 10 children in the family, and the types of people range from very light skin with light eyes to dark skin with dark eyes, but you're all part of the same family. But one can be classified as white and another person can be classified as a different race. So I just think that you'll see people with light skin and very curly hair, or you'll see people with dark skin and straighter hair, and it's just a mess. I think it's a mess. But anyway, it's the way it was. It's part of our history. That's the way things went down. Now, as I was saying, because I was born in 1994 and I'm a democracy baby, woo, freedom. My parents kind of tried to raise me to not classify myself by race, because they were trying to live out this new government, new frame of thinking that we're no longer separated by race. So raise our generations after that to not think or limit themselves with their race. Think outside of that. Think of other things. Identify yourself a different way. Which is really cool and great that they were part of the people that were like, we're gonna raise our kids different. But it doesn't help you when you go out into the real world and then people are like, okay, but which box do you fit in? What are you? Because there was only one thing that I knew about myself, and that was that I was Christian. And that's what I used to tell people. What are you? I'm Christian. And then they would look at me like, what? Like, they thought either I was being defiant or I was not very smart. Either way, I knew, like, okay, I'm telling people that I'm Christian. They're not being receptive of this answer. Maybe they want to know what kind of Christian I am. So I tell them that I'm Catholic. But I could see, like, I didn't know what it was, to be honest. Like, I didn't know that they were expecting me to identify a race and not a religion. Because I think that's also how I understood people, was by their religions. And I kind of went back to my parents to be like, yeah, tell them the story. Like, oh, people asking me what I am, and I told them that I'm Christian. And then they knew what the question was about. They knew that people were not asking me about my religion. And I remember them looking at each other very knowingly. And then my mother said to me, okay, if people ask you what you are, tell them that you're South African. Cool, I have an answer now. Yay, I know what I am. I'm South African. So I would go, like, people would still ask me the question, but now it's kind of evolved. Now they're asking me, like, are you white? Are you Indian? Are you African? Are you colored? And I was like, okay. You know, when if you have ever written a language exam, when you're not familiar with the language, obviously you're supposed to study, but sometimes you don't. And then it's a comprehension test and you don't understand what the question is asking. Neither do you understand what the comprehension is saying, because it's all in a different language. So you just kind of like look for a word that matches with the question and the paragraph, and you're like, this must be the answer, and you just put it together. It's kind of what I did. I was like, African. My parents taught me I was South African, so this must be the answer. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm African. And people would be like, oh, so you're black? And I'd be like, okay, this looks like the right part. Yep. Yes. Yeah, I'm black. And then I had an answer. People asked me what you are, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm black. And this probably went on for like a year in my life. Until one day, I remember we were in the junior library. Me and a friend were getting out our red books, and she was like, oh, what are you? And I was like, I'm black. And she looked at me. She was like, no, you're not. look at me and look at you. We don't look the same. I'm black. You're not black.
They're the same picture.
I was like, okay, I just picked up my red book and I went back to the classroom, and I knew I was gonna have another assertive conversation with my parents. What am I? Tell me, please, what am I? So I kind of knew at that point that they had to teach me, like, okay, in South Africa, we have 4 different classifications about race, and our classification, like your parents and grandparents, your cousins, we are all colored. So that was probably the first time, and I was very, very young, that I understood, oh, okay, there's different race groups, and I am classified under the colored race group. This was the first time I learned that I was colored. So the reason I'm telling this story is a few things. I have yet to meet someone who doesn't have an identity crisis, and it comes in different forms, like sexuality or gender or race or just like fitting in. I always find that, like, if you truly speak to someone, they'll tell you about the crisis that they've had in their life of trying to identify, of not being enough of one thing, or being too much of, you're not enough to fit in this group, but you're too much to fit in the opposite group or the other group that you know, so they're both pushing you away. So you're like, or you know what you are, but then you learn what that means for you. So yeah, I wanted to start this series about identity crisis because I think that it's really interesting, the different people and their stories. Also, I applaud my parents for trying to raise me, like, to not be classified how other people want to classify me, so that, like, I could be raised and then identify what I wanted to be and myself. But when you go out into the world and people are already placing biases on you, it's good to at least know what those biases are, so you can decide for yourself, like, I want to fit into this box, or I do identify with this, or I do relate to this, or this does make sense, instead of it being like a whole identity crisis of like, what? Imagine being asked, what are you at a young, what? Like, I'm a human being, man. I think, and then another reason why I wanted to make this video is, like, I think that people always look for shortcuts to get to know people, which makes sense. Like, you're not gonna have a deep conversation with every single person that you come into contact with. You're not gonna be able to get to know people on a deeper level. I think that might be reserved to us for a specific, or like even to have the capacity to know people on a deeper level, it takes a lot. So we look for shortcuts, but I just feel like now, and especially now where we're so connected to a global world and different people, those classifications don't work. Because if you tell somebody that I'm a colored person, you're not telling them anything about me. Like, I don't think that, like, what are you gonna get from that? You might assume things from that, but you'll probably be wrong. Like, what does that tell you about the music taste that I like? Because that's a big part of my identity and my personality. What does it tell you about my interest for, like, a career? Nothing. Like, and those are the things that I feel like build up a person, rather than how they look or how they speak, how they dress. Because you could look, speak, and dress a specific way that is classified by a specific box, but still be different. To be honest, the way people perceive you is their perception, and it's none of your business. What they think about you, what they it's none of your business, because it has no effect on who you are. So, to conclude, I love being South African. Especially like now that I've gone to live away from South Africa, and although it was only for less than a year, I appreciate South Africa and being South African so much from the diversity to the friendliness and the kindness and like the beauty of our country. Like, this is home and very beautiful. We have wonderful things about our country and our people, and like the talent, like the music, the acting, the shows that are coming out. It's just so beautiful. So I really love being South African. We have a lot of diversity and we have a very rich history. Knowing where you come from is important. Your ancestry or the history in your family, like, it helps you, it gives you a lot of background. Knowing like how your parents were raised and their grandparents were raised can help you get a lot of compassion for understanding why people are the way they are. And compassion is what also allows you to connect with other people. So today I made a mistake. I had an identity crisis.